Kia ora. Good afternoon, good evening. This isn't so. I mean, I suppose it's a Connecting the Dots podcast, but it's going to be a quick little one. So, if you know my story, you know everything that I've had to endure with my ex-husband and my husband and their cult, everything they put me through. I've put enough videos up talking about it, showing my journey because I'm wanting to help people. Who are victims of domestic abuse and gaslighting and covert narcissistic abuse and narcissism, and people who are victims of race hate crimes and human rights violations because of my ex-husband and my husband and their cult and their band of followers and all that. I'm a victim of all of it. I'm a victim of gaslighting, narcissistic abuse, gang stalking, because of what they did to me when I got locked away from my boys and that. I became a victim of a human rights violation and a race hate crime because I was completely treated like crap because the hospitals don't understand physics and they don't understand indigeneity. Now, as you know from my social media and from the various videos I've been putting up, the police have now finally opened an investigation for domestic abuse. They have reopened my case. They're looking into it. He's been suspended from work, potentially about to be fired, if not fired. All that sort of stuff. My story is slowly getting out there. I'm getting a lot of support from people within the company that he worked for. A lot of the employees, have been reaching out to offer me support, even offered to donate money to help me get a lawyer to fight him for custody of my children and clear my name. People in the games industry and the wider network of things have also been reaching out to lend support. I have a lot of people who are offering to, when my boys and I immigrate to Canada, offering to help us find good artists and programmers and coders and producers and all that sort of thing when we start Speaking Trees games to make the Quantum Menace and Dragon on the Hill and my dating app and all of that. So the games industry itself have been absolutely fantastic. People have started to wake up to what's going on and they've been incredibly supportive of me and my fight, to the point where I was approached a few days ago to ask if I would consider giving therapy to some of his victims and some of the people affected by what he's done to them in their lives, their partners' lives, their friends and families' lives, their co-workers' lives, as well as, like in mine and my boys' lives, which I have said I would gladly help anyone who was a victim, to him and his cult, because a lot of people are starting to wake up to the realization that they were trapped inside his cult. And because I'm an occult scientist, I know how to deprogram people. And in the course of my discussions with so many people over the last few days who have started sort of coming out of the woodwork, asking for my help, offering support, it got me thinking, because I've had to talk so much about what's going on with me and what happened with me in 23 years of domestic abuse and, covert narcissistic abuse and gaslighting and gang stalking and, all that sort of thing. And, the more I've talked about it, because, when people are coming to me and telling me their side of the story of their experiences with my ex-husband, Christopher Black, I'm then having to tell them my story so that they can identify with what I'm going through, so that they feel like a kindred connection. Because often, when you're a victim of these kind of abuses, especially if it's, anything to do with cults, because, cults rely on things like mind control. and gaslighting and emotional manipulation, and various kinds of abuses and that. And a lot of these people coming to terms with the fact that when they first met him, they were caught up in his cult, and it's been hard for them, and so they in the beginning felt in the beginning isolated and alone until they found me and they heard my story, and then they realized that I knew how to get them out of their darkness because I could identify with what they were going through. So one of the first things I do when they come to me is I tell them my side of the story, and then it gives them it opens the door for them to feel comfortable to tell their own story, and then I add things that I can relate to. Well, yeah, because when he did that to me, or well, when this happened, this is how I reacted, and then it makes them more relaxed around me, and lets them open up and express how they truly feel, knowing that I'm not going to judge them, and that I'm not going to publicise anything, that I'm not going to divulge anything to social media and all that sort of thing, because all I care about is, helping victims of this kind of abuse. And I've been saying to a couple of the people that I've been talking to that, when you hear these stories about these girls getting kidnapped, and, they do the housework, and they kind of assimilate to the life around them in this situation like that, it's I said I can identify with them because I'm starting to realize just how deep in his web that I was. It's only since I've been able to get all of this off my chest and do my podcast, and I'm looking at various cases to work on while trying to help people in the background who are dealing with the aftermath of meeting my ex-husband. I started to realize that, in all seriousness, and I mean this 100%, I seriously think that I was a victim of Stockholm Syndrome. I have just done a little bit of research into it, and the more I read up about it, the more I'm convinced I was suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, because of the fact that even though I knew he was treating me bad, even though I knew how he was treating me and my boys was wrong, I used to defend him. I was always making excuses for him. And then I'd go to bed at night and I'd cry my eyes out, and I would pray and pray and pray to be rescued and saved. But I was trying to keep the peace and be the better person. I kept saying to the police, and even, at the hospital when they locked me up, I was trying to be the better person and keep the peace for the sake of my boys. But then I've looked up what Stockholm Syndrome is and the symptoms of it. And I'm utterly convinced now that I was suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. I was anti-authoritarian. If you knew me before and you know some of my old social media that I have posted in the past, I have had to go along and recorrect a lot of assumptions and feelings and thoughts and emotions that I had about, people in authority and people of higher position. I mean, other than the hospital, I have no respect for them whatsoever. The doctors, I've zero respect for them. Same with social services and that. I have no respect for any of them. I give respect where I get respect. But I had a view about the police and, people in authority many years ago that went against my morals and my values and my ethics. And I knew it at the time, but I would say these things anyway because it's what I thought he wanted to hear. Because he indulged in it, he engaged in it, he relished in these conversations. And it was anything to keep the peace and anything to please him so that he wouldn't further treat me like crap. You have to understand, I had periods of time with him and his cult, because you got to remember that a lot of the members of his cult, he met through me because they were students of mine, they were clients, they were people I knew. He ingratiated himself into their lives. He weaved himself into their lives in order to be able to get a hold of them and feed them what they wanted to hear, and they fed him what he wanted to hear. And so they fed off each other, and I was what they fed off, you know. And he had me at a point where he was making sure that I couldn't earn any money, so I would never get independence. So even down to buying underwear and sanitary equipment, I had to go to him, even though we weren't legally married, even though he had no legal obligation to me. But the thing is, I used to say to people, he's so wonderful. Like, even though he has no financial obligation to me, like, look at him. He's buying my underwear, he's buying my sanitary equipment. He buys, like my gluten-free food because I have a gluten allergy, that sort of thing. But in the meantime, I was overlooking the fact, I was making excuses for the fact that, yeah, he was doing those things. But if he didn't want to buy me tampons, I had to find alternatives. If he didn't want to buy me pants, like when I had no pant, like all my tights and everything, I have to be careful around my tummy because of my hernia scars. I've got, I had 3 hernia surgeries that saved my life, and I've got massive meshes across my stomach with these big scars. And so I have to be very careful with what I have around my belly button because it becomes painful. So I wear a lot of tights and jeggings and that. I will wear jeans, but I just haven't found any comfortable enough. But if I got holes in them, if he bought me pants and then I got holes in them because they were cheap and, they break apart really easy, he would make me walk around the house with no pants on. I would walk around the house in my underwear and a big t-shirt, and I did that for 3 months. I walked around for nearly 13 months without shoes, not a shoe on my foot. If we went out, I had to wear slippers, and then I just wouldn't get out of the car. I had like one pair of hiking boots that I used to wear if we went hiking, but they were like filthy, muddy, dirty, wretched looking things. But yeah, 13 months I went without shoes on my feet. Now I live in the UK, and you can buy a pair of shoes for like £5, but I didn't even have the £5, and he didn't give me the £5 to buy a pair of shoes. And he played the victim, and he was so good at it that he led me to believe that, oh, the poor thing, like, he doesn't have the money to buy me shoes, but he could go off drinking and go to concerts and spend a weekend with his cult, and having fun and doing drugs and getting drunk and, leaving us locked inside for a few days. But, I was making excuses for him as to why he couldn't buy me a pair of shoes. And if he didn't want to buy me food, he wouldn't buy me food. And I can tell you here and now, there were times where I would go without food where I was tasting my kidneys. Like, I could taste, that taste that you get when your kidneys start going bad. I was tasting that because I have a gluten allergy and I'm allergic to eggs. So there's a lot of foods that I can't eat. I have to keep my diet very strict. And he would say he didn't have the money to buy me food, to buy me like gluten-free meats and gluten-free food. So I would have to go days without food because what he said to me was, I either buy you food or I buy the kids food. Now, he knew I would die for my children any day of the week for whatever reason. I live for my children. They are my Yahweh. They are the air that I breathe. And he knew this, which is why I got locked up. He played them as the victim to the police to get me taken away from them. But he, of course I'm going to say, well, yeah, you're going to feed my children. So I would go days upon days upon days upon days without food. And then, of course, the hospital did the same thing, where I would go days upon days upon days upon days without food, and my kidneys started packing up. Because they weren't feeding me. They didn't have gluten-free stuff to give me, or they'd try and offer me things like egg, stuff with egg in it, or, like salmon, and I'm not into that sort of thing. And so I would go days and days and days without food. The only thing I'd get at the hospital was cereal in the morning and That was and toast if they remembered to get me gluten-free toast. It got to the point where some of the members of staff were coming into my room at night and sneaking me bags of fruit just so that I would have something. But it wasn't enough, and my kidney started packing up, and I got a rash all over my face. And it was only because a friend of mine jumped in and started ordering me kebabs every other day that I ended up not having a heart attack. So when I looked up the symptoms of Stockholm Syndrome, there's not a symptom there I don't relate to. And, you know, Stockholm Syndrome is for people, obviously, who have been kidnapped, but in extreme cases of, you know, domestic abuse and that as well, you can suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. So it's a bit of a shock. I'll put links in the description box below, because the sad thing is, because I've had to do my own police investigation, because I've had to gather all my own evidence, I've also had to treat myself as well. I have had to work on myself in order to help me cope with what it is that I have been put through over the last, especially over the last like 14, 15 months, with being the victim of, you know, racial abuse, race hate crime, my human rights violated, so many laws were broken, with the mishandling of my case, and, you know, me fighting to get justice, but and custody of my boys and hold Chris accountable for what he's done. But, you know, you got to remember that this goes back 23 years with him, and it goes back from like 2016, 2017 with the members of his cult, the people that teamed up to help him behind the scenes. If you go to my old Instagram, Barefoot Warrior Woman, you're going to see a lot of stuff that I put up there, you know, that I documented in the past, and I've got a lot that I've got on file that I haven't put up there, where I had a bad attitude towards authority. I had a bad attitude in general because he did. And so, you know, one of the symptoms of Stockholm Syndrome is, you know, you start to identify with your abuser, with your kidnapper. You start to feel like you have things in common, and you can even set out goals and plans for the future for you to do things with your abuser or your kidnapper. And even though technically what he did to me and my boys isn't kidnapping, he has complete control over what interactions we have with the outside world. And he also has, I'm absolutely convinced of it, him and my husband Martin, I'm utterly convinced, suffer from antisocial, what do you call it? Antisocial behavior, antisocial behavioral personality disorder, sociopaths. If you look at the symptoms of what antisocial behavioral personality disorder is, antisocial personality disorder, is that what it's called? Antisocial personality disorder, I think that's what it's called. They've got all the symptoms of that as well, and that's only because I was watching a documentary yesterday about Edmund Kemper, the serial killer, and he was diagnosed with it. And when I looked it up, I was like, holy flip-flop Batman, that's my last two husbands. Because you need to understand that these people choose victims like us because they see us as being weak and vulnerable. So I have been putting my story out there from day one. I have been putting it out there and putting it out there from the second I realised that he was involved in something, you know, when I made that video about the tarot readers being false prophets, and then like the next day or whatever it was, he put the cocaine in my pizza, and that I have been making it public and putting my story out there and getting every thought and expression out there for everybody to see. and putting all my evidence up, even at the hospital, for everybody to see, even when they took my phone off me because he lied in order to get my phone taken off me. So I wasn't even able to contact the New Zealand consulate. I wasn't able to contact lawyers. I wasn't able to contact family or my sons or anything. I had to rely on a payphone and the help of people on the outside who had previously been in hospital with me, to help me get information and messages and that to my loved ones. Like, my human rights were violated on levels that, and I live in an apparent first world country, so I had to really dig deep, and I had to find a way to survive to get this story out, because I knew that once I was free and I got my independence and I was able to start telling my story and get it out there, I would be able to help so many people. And I was right, because now I have a lot of people coming to me and saying to me, I knew him, I worked with him, he is this and he was that to me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm really affected by what he's done. Um, I didn't know he was in a cult. That's affecting me emotionally. I don't know how to deal with this. Like, can you please help me deal with my rage? Can you help me deal with my pain? So I'm helping a lot of his victims who were people who just knew him or worked with him or knew of him because of somebody they knew who was connected to him, who have been finding it really hard when they've been hearing my story. It's triggering things in them and emotions and thoughts and feelings in them that they don't know how to handle. So they've been coming to me, and of course, I'm going to help them. I'm not going to turn my back on them. Like a lot of them just, it's the fact that he's in a cult, coming to the realization that he's self-proclaimed Prince of Darkness. And if you know my tweets and all that, he's got an Instagram where he talks, for his motorbike and stuff. That's it's very dark, twisted stuff. If you go to my Twitter account and scroll down a little, you'll see me talking about his Instagram and deciphering the occult language and what he's describing on his Instagram in regards to his motorbike. So a lot of people have woken up and thought, oh my God, I knew a guy who's in a cult. I knew a guy, I worked with a guy, I was friends with a guy who, is clearly in something very dark and twisted. And and now his ex-wife is coming out telling these stories. And they were first drawn to me because he told so many lies about me. They all told so many lies about me that they wanted to see who I was, to check me out, to see how bad I really was. And then they started to realize the amount of people. If I had £1 for every person that said to me, you're nothing like he told us you were, you're nothing like they said you were, and then they came to me and offering support in that and saying, what can I do to help you get your boys back? What can we do to help you get justice? Like, we need to be a part of helping you get justice. And through them paying attention to what I'm, my tweets and my LinkedIn, and I don't do Instagram anymore, but, my videos and all that sort of thing, it's really started to affect them, because they've realised that this whole time they were friends with someone who was that dark and twisted. They were work colleagues with someone who was that cruel and tyrannical. And so as it's coming out, I'm healing from it, because now I get to help other people heal. So I know there was a greater purpose for all of this. I also get to do these podcasts and that I love, while still, fighting for justice to get my boys and I out of here so that we can hit the road and make these shows and that. And in doing so, I've realised that he is definitely, him and my husband definitely suffer from antisocial personality disorder. And I'm utterly convinced that I was a victim of Stockholm Syndrome. And through me working on myself and helping my children and helping other people, it's deprogrammed me. I had to start deprogramming myself from the effects of everything that he put me through when I was locked up in hospital. because once I detoxed and got all the drugs out of my system that he was putting in my system, I was able to think more clearly. And so that's why, with my Jack the Ripper podcast and my Cleveland Torso Murder podcast, and that I'm recorrecting the mistakes that I made, because at the time when I made the original ones, I was still working on the mindset that they were human sacrifices for, like the Illuminati and all that sort of thing, which is completely wrong. And I'm a scientist, and I am honest, and I put everything out there, and I only deal with facts and truth. And I will recorrect any mistake that I make. I'm not above recorrecting my mistakes. I will admit when I'm wrong. I'm not above admitting I was wrong, because I'm trying to be a good example for my sons. I'm trying to raise them as their mum and dad to be good, honest, hardworking, loyal citizens, who have strong morals and ethics and values. But also as well, I'm now fully aware of the fact that I've become a extreme role model for the victims of my ex-husband and his cult. And so I have to be the kind of person that he isn't. I have to be the kind of person that is never going to let them down in their perception of me and what they think I can do for them. So, they watch everything I do now. They watch everything I put up, and in turn, it's got them all talking and opening up. And it's beautiful, because now it's helping them heal as well as keeping their distance from him. They're making better life choices, and they're growing from the experience instead of suffering in the pain and suffering in silence. They're speaking up and out, like I've been encouraging them all to do, speaking up and out, and as a result, they're healing and ascending, which is the whole reason why I do this in the first place. I love being an occult scientist. Part of being an occult scientist is learning to understand psychology, the way the mind works, and part of who I am as a person with my podcast. I add a little bit of myself in everything that I talk about, because I grew up in an occult world. And, a lot of the things that I talk about involve victims of race hate crimes, or, injustices and that sort of thing. And so I can relate to that sort of thing, and I put them into my podcast because I'm trying to help people. So the more people that hear my story, the more people I can help, the stronger I make people, the more justice I bring to my situation, the sooner I get my boys home, the sooner we can pack up and leave and, hit the open road and start this new life that we so rightly deserve. Because that's all we've been wanting for like 6-7 years now, is to just get out on our own and have our adventures and make these shows that I planned on doing all those years ago, but never got to do because I had to deal with all this bollocks. But, you live and learn. And as a result, I now teach everybody who listens to my podcast, and now the people that are coming to me behind the scenes, for support and helping them deprogram from their interactions with my ex-husband and his cult. So I just wanted to put it out there. I'll put a link in the description box below so you can see what Stockholm Syndrome is. But I had every symptom. I made excuses for him. I defended him, even though he was breaking my heart every single day. Even when he was treating me like crap, I was still trying to stroke his ego in order to calm him down so that he wouldn't hurt us even more. And then, all this stuff kicked off last year when we were just about to walk out the door and begin our new life. And then a whole new battle began, and now this whole new battle has culminated into me making these podcasts, and now all these people have come to me behind the scenes. So, everything happens for a reason. So there's one last thing left to do now. That's to bring justice, through the law, through the courts of law, for what he's put me and my son through, for what him and the hospitals and that have put me and my son through. And leave England, we're thinking we'll live in Ireland until we can get visas to Canada. In the meantime, we'll go around making our shows, you know. But yeah, they're the only last two things left, and I, with every fibre of my being, I know I'm going to get justice. I've known from day one, for many, many, many years, that whoever it was, according to the ancient prophecy that was told to me by my teacher, and that is told throughout, Indigenous law for centuries now, whoever it was that was going to try and take the messenger of the gods down, that they would suffer extreme justice, they would become the most hated people on the planet, and then I would finally be able to step out and shine and start healing people once that problem was removed. I've always known for well over 25 years that whoever it was that was going to be responsible for taking the chosen one, or the prophet from the Pacific, who was going to try and make the attempt on their life, would suffer the consequences for it. And as a result, the one talked about in the ancient prophecy would then be able to step out into the world, go to the land of A's, which at the time I thought was America, but now I know is Canada, and do my work, which was the prophecy was that I was going to, that the person chosen from the islands was going to marry science and religion to create a whole new belief system. And that's what I've done. That's what I'm doing with my podcasts and my shows. I'm teaching people a different way to understand death and religion and faith and God, and I'm offering a whole new way to see faith and religion and the paranormal and all of that sort of thing. I've coupled faith, I've coupled religion with science and created a whole new faith that's helping a lot of people. I mean, clearly it's helping a lot of people because I now have all these people in the background that are coming to me needing my help to deal with a cult and being victims of domestic abuse and cult abuse and mind control abuse and narcissistic abuse and all that. So yeah, so I just want to put that out there, and just let you know I'm still here. I'm still strong. I'm fighting every day. Justice is coming. I have no doubts about that whatsoever. No doubts about that whatsoever. But I wanted to put it out there because if there is anybody out there listening who is going through the same thing as what I've gone through, even like one little part of what I've gone through, I'm here to let you know that you just hold your head up, you stand in your truth, you don't ever back down, don't ever let anyone tell you you're less than what you know you are. Don't compromise your morals and your ethics and your values to please the person who is trying to keep you down. If you can get out of the relationship, and this doesn't have to be, it can be platonic related, because these people that have come to me, they're people that used to work with him and people that did work with him, like in his company that he's supposed to be in now. These are people that were friends of his. These were people that, it wasn't sexual or anything like that. It wasn't, those kind of relationships, but they're coming to me, so this doesn't have to be, um, love relationships or sexual encounters or anything like that. You can be a victim to this stuff for people that, are your bosses. People who, gaslighting. I know the hospital I was put in, Fieldhead Hospital, the amount of gaslighting that went on there with those doctors was unbelievable. No, you're not being hacked. No, it's all in your head. And then I proved that I was hacked. Oh no, you're not being gang stalked, and then I proved I was gang stalked. So everything they said that I wasn't, no, he wasn't planning on moving away. And then people saying, oh yeah, no, he told me that he was planning on moving to Whitby. And if you need me to, I'll stand up in court and give evidence, because like I've got the conversations on my phone where he said, I want to move my boys to Whitby, and I keep saying to the hospital, he's planning on moving away. No, you're delusional. It's psychosis. You're mental. It's this. You're that. And then I was telling the truth the whole time. So the amount of gaslighting that went on with these apparent professionals with medical degrees, and the racial abuse and the discrimination that I had to face, and I walked through that fire, baby. And you know why? Because not only did I know that I had my babies to fight for, but I also know that it was people like you that I'm helping now that needed to know that I was out there and what to do to survive if you were ever in that situation. So I documented my whole process, and I put all of that crap up on my YouTube and on my Instagram and now on my Twitter, so that you know exactly what to do in order to help yourself get out of it. Because I knew God had put me there, Adam. I knew my ancestors and that chose me to go through that trial, to take on that battle when the police took me away from my babies and lumped me in that place with those sharks getting ready to feed off me. I refused to back down. I refused to give in. I refused to agree to any of their diagnoses. And I stood in my truth, and I knew that I had to be strong enough to survive it, because once I got out, you people would need to know my story. So I did it for you too. I did it all for you. I went through it knowing that at the end of it, there were going to be people out there who would find strength and hope and faith in my journey and my process, and that's why I did it. And I have never felt more powerful in all my life. The only hurdle I have now is that I need my story to get out there so that I can get justice brought upon the people that did this to me and my sons, so that I can get my sons, and then we can walk away with a clean slate, and then I never have to talk about this again. Because all I want to do is make my podcast and do my shows and set up my little internet radio station and make my video games with the money I get when I take them all to court. So there you go. So I'm sharing my story. So hold your head up. Do not give up. Never give in. And don't let anyone, regardless of whether they are a judge, like I did, doctors, teachers, bosses, if they're trying to make you feel that you are less than, if they're trying to gaslight you to get you to bend to their will, even though you know that you are not the person they're saying you are, don't give up, don't give in, and document everything. No matter how small you think the information is, no matter how small, I promise you, by the end of it, when you're ready to hold these people accountable for what they've done, in amongst all that evidence you've gathered, you will have enough to be able, that will stand up in a court of law where the courts will have to be forced to hold these people accountable. Because that's what I've done. I had to do my own police investigation. My podcast and that, with the investigations I do, I was raised knowing how to do investigations, and I had no one to support me, so I had to do it myself. And now I've been able to prove everything that I told those hospitals he was doing and he was up to. I've got evidence to back every single one of my claims. So they can't justify their judgment of me or their assessment of me in a court of law, because I now have evidence to back everything up, including him stealing my bakery. No, he's not trying to steal your work. No, he's not stealing your books. You're making it up. You're really quite sick, aren't you? And now I have proof that he's stolen 3 books of mine and stole my bakery idea. So, all evidence. All evidence. So document everything, no matter how big, no matter how small. Take screenshots, put cameras and videos in that in the backgrounds of conversations you're having with people. Document everything. And I promise you with every fibre of my being, that when it comes time to stand up and speak up and out, to defend yourself against these people who are gaslighting you and abusing you so abysmally, because you're Indigenous, because you're a woman, because you're LGBT, whatever your situation, when you're able to confront them with the evidence, they won't have a leg to stand on. Because that's what I did. I'm just waiting now for, now that the West Yorkshire Police have finally opened an investigation and have given me a domestic violence number. They've admitted that I am now a victim of domestic violence. I don't know what's taking them so long. I know that they're going over all my social media and all that, but I have faith, and I know I'm going to get my kids back. Like, I know how this ends, so I'm not worried. That's why I've never been stressed out and an emotional wreck, because my faith and my gods and my ancestors have always let me know that as long as I walk through that fire of purification, when I'm going through hell, I'm going to come out the victor. My faith has never let me believe that I wasn't going to win this and get justice. So you have to believe the same thing, and I promise it makes you feel so powerful at the end when you're the victim of this kind of abuse. Especially, for me, 23 years we're talking about, when you're a victim of that kind of deep psychologically rooted abuse, you're made to feel weak, dumb, lazy, helpless, stupid. You question who you are, you question your values, your morals, your psychological state of mind, your loyalty, everything gets called into question, and you're made to feel so small. But the biggest mistake he made was putting cocaine in my pizza that day, because that started my rise and his fall, because then he targeted me as a mother, and I am now fighting for my boys who are still, their phones are still hacked, their Instagrams, he's, what he did to me, he's done to them, with their social media and that, and the mind control, the emotional and mental abuse, and that he's on at them all the time. And I just keep their heads down, keep them focused on their schoolwork, keep them focused on their interests, and more importantly, I keep them focused on the future. And it keeps their head up, because I'm treading water, and I'm holding my boys each under one arm, and I'm determined to keep kicking until I touch land. And then once my feet hit soil, we're out of here and we're not looking back. So, and if I can do it, you can do it. So let me be the example with which you need to follow my lead. And I'm here for you. And I'll keep putting these podcasts out because I love doing them so much. And when I have my radio station in Canada, I'm going to have a late night talk back radio. So you will be able to call in, you will be able to message, the chat box sort of thing, and I will help you with your paranormal problems, with your ascension issues. If you're a victim of domestic abuse or anything like that, I'm going to have a call-in talkback radio, and you will be able to contact me and talk to me, and I will be able to talk you through your problems and your symptoms and your healing. I'll interpret your dreams, and I'll be like an occult agony aunt. Anything to do with ascension and abuse and the occult and supernatural and paranormal and anything like that, we'll be open to discuss anything and everything you want, as long as it's not to do with politics or anything like that. That's not what I'm about. I'm here for people's soul growth and soul healing. So I can't wait. So anyway, I'm going to go now, and I will speak to you later. Have a good evening. Ka kite anō. Mwah.